Can you recommend any literature or media that explains the findings of so-called prehistoric man in view of Catholic teaching, but in a detailed scientific explanation? Keep up the good work. This is Patrick from Rome, Italy. So again, sometimes people, if they're dealing with a very literal understanding, the 7 days, 6 days, like we talked about, don't understand how you end up with prehistoric. Right. At the same time, sometimes we hear about, we talked about Adam and Eve and the parents there, and that's right out of Pope Pius XII's document as well that you were quoting earlier, right? As Catholics, so we believe that. So where does, you got prehistoric man and Neanderthal and somebody else on Discoveries finding giants, how does that all come into play? How do we understand that?
Right. I'm going to give you a series of books in this explanation, Patrick, but it's a really good question. Let me first kind of give you the explanation of what the science says and how the Catholic Church interprets it in light of the coming of this soul, which differentiates human beings from all other, predecessors. First of all, we see that there is a break-off, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of a million or more years ago, when you have basically Homo sapiens is going to break off between Homo sapien neanderthalensis and Homo sapien sapiens. So that's going to occur, somewhere around a million or more years ago, and that goes along for quite some time, where Homo sapiens sapiens, are developing, and then 200,000 years ago, we have what's called mitochondrial Eve and y-chromosome Adam. And mitochondrial Eve, we right now, every human being in the world, I don't care where you're from, Africa, China, United States, whatever, wherever you're from, you're going to have her mitochondrial contribution to your DNA. It's going to be transmitted through the mother, and everybody's going to have it. She is our common ancestor. And then about 200,000 years ago, there was another person that we call y-chromosome Adam, and we have, every man on the planet has the remnant, the y-chromosome remnant from y-chromosome Adam, and so we do have an awareness that our first genetic parents, I'm not saying this is Adam and Eve, they're called mitochondrial Eve and y-chromosome Adam because they're our first genetic parents, but remember, those are names that are given to scientific genetic parents, not necessarily connected with the Church's view of Adam and Eve. So hold on to that for just a minute. But that's 200,000 years ago, and they create a kind of a lineage. Now, there's a book you really want to get. It's just come out. It's 2016 by Noam Chomsky and Robert Berwick, and it's called Why Only Us? Now, I'm going to give you the brief explanation of this, but in that book, what they're trying to say is human beings received the gift of what I was just calling syntactical language. And the most remarkable part of the gift is that no matter how different the structures of various linguistic systems are, the same kind of understanding of syntax is present in every human being. The capacity to abstract, the capacity for conceptual ideas, which is required for syntax, is present in every single human being. Now, because of that, you could take a kid from China. You could put that kid into Africa. You could have done that 70,000 years ago, and the kid will learn the African language just as easily as Chinese, no problem, despite the incredible differences in the formal linguistic system. So it's not just a bunch of rules. So of course they're asking this question, why only us? Why don't primates have this? And why do every single solitary human being with mitochondrial DNA, why do they have this capacity? And why did it burgeon? And at the same time, we're talking 70,000 years ago, the same time, what else begins to happen? Why human beings become interested in religion. right? And this is very evident, right, from the fact that they start burying their dead, and they start having religious symbols, placed in the burial mounds with their dead. They start, what else do they artistic inscriptions on the walls of the caves, right? 70,000 years ago, human beings become homo symbolicus, right? They become interested in symbols. They become interested in art. And then the human beings connect art with symbols, right? And of course, not only that, they start right? They've been hanging around the borderline between Namibia and Angola, right, for like 130,000 years, since the time of mitochondrial Eve and y-chromosome Adam. Then suddenly, 70,000 or 60,000 years ago, 10,000 years after this language seems to have come into the world and become universal, right? All of a sudden, they start on this migratory pattern that in 5,000 years, they're up, in the Middle East, then they're in Europe, then they're in Northern Europe, then they're in China, then they cross the Arctic bridge over to Alaska, come all the way down, from the Arctic bridge, and then when they're finished crossing, they go all the way in 1,000 years from Alaska all the way to the tip of South America. Now you tell me, what in the world? They start developing laws. They start developing community structures. I mean, why only us? It's not only why only us. What's the difference? And the difference is the soul. And what I would say, and what's in, of course, Humani Generis, is that we have to, essentially, the Pope is recommending that we believe in monogenism, right? That instead of polygenism, right? Which is that we have one first parent, and that's perfectly plausible according to the theory. 70,000 years ago, Adam and Eve were given a soul, one couple, and their progeny starts getting a transmaterial, transphysical soul from God from every generation after them. 10,000 years later, they're just migrating out of Africa. They're burying their dead. They have syntactical language. They have symbols. They begin developing mathematics. There are all kinds of remnants of all of this, starting at about 60,000 years ago, that's developing and constantly developing by leaps as they're moving from one place to the next. As you see that it's not just, that they kind of have a nice continuous growth. No, it's like linguistics building upon linguistics. So now you have second and third level abstractions, and they come very quickly, and mathematics come very quickly, right? And the use of mathematics and engineering and water and irrigation come very quickly. And then, of course, it just, the migratory patterns get faster and faster. And of course, the religious development, the symbolic development, the artistic development, the awareness of God, the development of laws and community structures, very quickly, it's just accelerative. And you look at that and you go, huh? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's gotta be a soul is present there, and we're just leaving the chimpanzees in the dust. Why only us, they query. And what is the difference, I query. And of course, if you put the two together, the soul is just, the evidence for the soul is just all over the place. Now, I've written a book called The Soul's Upward Yearning, and in there I talk about the soul, the evidence for the soul. We've talked about some of that before in this program, from near-death experiences, from the transcendental and so forth. I'm not going to go into that now, but what I want to say is, if you correlate the evidence of the soul from that book, and there are 10 things that come with a soul that no chimpanzee has that are in that book,